From Vox, September 29th, Rep. Adam Schiff said Sunday the whistleblower at the center of a growing scandal surrounding President Donald Trump will testify before the House Intelligence Committee very soon. On CNN, September 29th, Schiff said Sunday on ABC as well as NBC's Meet the Press that he expects the whistleblower to testify very soon. The Washington Post, September 29th. In an appearance on ABC News this week, Schiff echoed...
The moment Jasmine Crockett leaned forward in the cable news studio, the very atmosphere of the ongoing political crisis surrounding Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, shifted. It was a shift from simple political drama to a deeper, more unsettling narrative of systemic corruption and self-preservation. Crockett's assertion was stark, focused, and utterly destabilizing to the official story. Marjorie didn't quit because of threats. She quit because of what she saw. The entire narrative around Marjorie Taylor Greene's sudden resignation shifted. Because what Crockett revealed in that interview wasn't just about one congresswoman folding under pressure. Will you move the cable? It was about what happens when the machine you helped build turns its gears on you. The resignation of one of the GOP's most aggressive, attention-seeking members after just 1 week of internal pressure demanded an explanation, and the one offered, vague personal reasons and security concerns, rang hollow to many, especially to Rep. Crockett. This story, unfolding over weeks, involved sealed files, panicked backroom conversations, and a growing suspicion that the reasons for MTG's exit lay not in public criticism, but in classified sensitive information she could no longer afford to ignore. The interview that cracked the official story the setting was mundane, a standard, brightly lit cable news studio, but the conversation quickly became anything but. Jake Tapper opened the discussion by noting the significance of the event. MTG had resigned from Congress, effective immediately, citing the standard personal reasons and increased security concerns. Crockett, however, approached the topic with a chilling clarity, her voice carrying the careful precision of someone who's thought deeply about what they're about to say. Her initial response was a systemic breakdown of MTG's entire political brand. Jake, I want to be very clear about something that I think gets lost in all the noise around MTG's resignation. Marjorie Taylor Greene spent years building and feeding a hate machine. She amplified conspiracy theories. She targeted colleagues. She ginned up anger and violence and made it her entire political brand. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she did it deliberately because it gave her power, gave her attention, gave her influence in the MAGA movement. Then came the core of her argument, the fatal inconsistency in the narrative of political pressure. And then after 1 week, literally 7 days of Donald Trump turning that same machine on her, she folded. 1 week. Think about that. I've been dealing with death threats, with racist attacks, with people showing up outside my office, making threatening gestures for months, plural months, and I'm still here doing my job. But MTG faced 1 week of Trump criticizing her, and she's gone. That tells you this isn't really about security threats or personal safety. This is about something else. Tapper's follow-up was the natural extension of this logic. What do you think that something else is? Crockett's reply was measured, but delivered the first hint of her powerful theory. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene finally realized that the monster she'd been feeding was going to consume her. And I think, and this is where it gets interesting, I think she saw something coming that she didn't want to be part of. She cemented the argument by pointing to the behavior of MTG's colleagues. Trump had publicly attacked Thomas Massie, Lauren Boebert, and other Republicans who signed the petition to release the Epstein files. They took the heat and stayed put. So why is MTG different? What makes her situation so unique that she had to resign instead of just weathering the storm like her colleagues? The shadow of the Epstein files, the question hanging over the interview, and soon over the entire Congress, was the link to the ongoing explosive investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein files. Tapper directly asked, "Are you suggesting this has something to do with?"
In Daily Kos, we're ready to hear from the whistleblower as soon as that is done, and we'll keep obviously riding shotgun to make sure that the acting director doesn't delay in that clearance process. In CNBC, we'll get the unfiltered testimony of that whistleblower. In Market Watch, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff said Sunday that an agreement has been reached under which the whistleblower will testify before the committee very soon. I can keep going, but again, the chairman refused to allow us to put these into the record with unanimous consent. So, I've read those out, and as we know, it is important to protect whistleblowers from retaliation and from firing. And we want to make sure whistleblowers are able to come forward. But in this case, The fact that we are getting criticized by Chairman Adam Schiff for statements that he himself made early on this process shows the duplicity and just the abuse of power that we are continuing to see. With 1:54 seconds left, I'll yield to my colleague, Mr. Jordan. I think, but there's still 4 people we've deposed that we have not been able to use to see their transcripts, have there? Master, I want to follow up on some of the questions from my colleagues. Some of the early questions seem to suggest that your testimony here was completely irrelevant to the issues at hand. Why are you even here? Isn't this just some small matter that should have been referred to HR? So I want to bring our attention to someone who thought you were actually very important to this whole plot or scheme, and that is the President of the United States. There was only one ambassador, I believe, who is discussed by the President in the July 25th call, and that was you, Ambassador Ivanovich. And I want to refer back to how you were brought up in that conversation. At one point during the conversation, the President brings up this prosecutor who was very good, and it was shut down, and that's really unfair. And I think you indicated earlier that that was a likely reference to Mr. Lutsenko, the corrupt prosecutor. Is that right? I believe that is the case, but I don't know. So, immediately after the President brings up this corrupt former prosecutor, only one American ambassador is brought up in the call. Immediately after the President brings up this corrupt prosecutor that he praises and says he was treated very unfairly, he then encourages Zelensky to speak with Giuliani, the guy who orchestrated the smear campaign against you. Correct? Yes. And he then brings you up. So he praises the corrupt prosecutor. He says, I want you to talk to Giuliani, the guy who smeared you. And then he brings you up. He obviously thought you were relevant to this, but what is even more telling is immediately after he brings you up and says that you, the woman, was bad news, he says, there's a lot to talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So, whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Immediately after praising this corrupt prosecutor, he attacks you and then he goes right to Biden. That would indicate to you, wouldn't it, Ambassador, that he connects you somehow with this prosecutor you were at odds with and his desire to see this investigation of Biden go forward? Would it not? Again, you're absolutely right that that is the thought progression. My colleagues also asked, in pushing you out of the way, ultimately Ambassador Taylor got appointed. Is Ambassador Taylor the kind of person that would further Giuliani's aims? And I think we can all agree that Ambassador Taylor is a remarkable public servant. Absolutely. But what if the President could put someone else in place that wasn't a career diplomat? What if he could put in place, say, a substantial donor to his inaugural? What if he could put in place someone with no diplomatic experience at all? What if he could put in place someone whose portfolio doesn't even include Ukraine? Might that person be willing to work with Rudy Giuliani in pursuit of these investigations? Yeah, maybe. That's exactly what happened, wasn't it? Yes. And my colleagues also say, well, the security assistance ultimately went through. So, if they sought to condition or bribe Ukraine into doing these investigations by withholding security assistance, they ultimately paid the money. Are you aware, Ambassador, that the security assistance was not released until after a whistleblower complaint made its way to the White House? Yes, I'm aware of that. Are you aware that it was not released until Congress announced it was doing an investigation? Yes, I'm aware of that. And finally, I want to ask you about the call record that my colleague read at the outset. I'm curious about this. And just for people watching at home so they're not confused, there are 2 calls here. There's the congratulatory call after Zelensky is inaugurated, which my ranking member read this morning, and then there's, of course, the very problematic call in July. And one of the reasons we are here is what happened between April and July. But there was a readout put out by the White House at the time the April congratulatory call was made, and the White House readout said that the President discussed with Zelensky helping Ukraine root out corruption. Now that in fact doesn't appear anywhere in that call. So, I want to ask you, Ambassador, why would the White House put out an inaccurate reading? Why would the White House represent that the President said something about corruption when he said nothing about corruption in that call or in fact in the one in July? I can't answer that question. I don't have visibility into that. I thank you. I yield now 5 minutes to recognize the ranking member. I just remind the gentleman there's actually 3 calls. There's the 2 calls with President Trump and the one that you reiterated in our last hearing a couple weeks ago. Ambassador, I just want to clarify something before I yield. Are you against political appointed ambassadors? Is it not the president's prerogative to appoint whoever he wants in any country? First of all, I am not against political ambassadors. I just wanted to clear that up. Now can I yield to Mr. Stefanik? I know, Mr. Stefanik, you had a few quick questions for the ambassador. Yield to you, Mr. Stefanik. Thank you, Mr. Nunez. Ambassador Ivanovich, thank you for being here today. The gentlewoman will suspend. What is the interruption for this time? It is our time. The gentlewoman will suspend. You're not recognized. Mr. Nunez, you are minority counsel. I just recognized. Under the House Res. 660, you are not allowed to yield time except to minority counsel. The ranking member yielded time to another member of Congress. That is not accurate. You're gagging the New York. Ambassador Ivanovich, I want to thank you for being. The gentlewoman will suspend. You're not recognized. This is the 5th time you have interrupted members of Congress, newly elected members of Congress. The gentlewoman will suspend. Mr. Chair, we control the time. It's been customary of this committee that whoever controls the time can yield to whoever they wish. If we have members of Congress that have a few questions, seems appropriate that we'd be able to let Ms. Stefanik ask her questions.